Hey everybody, Smart Silver Stacker here. So I'm sure that many of you are familiar with the rumors that have been circulating for years regarding the creation of a BRICS alternative currency. But according to a recent statement by the head of the BRICS organization's task force on financial services, there is indeed a BRICS currency in the works, and it will be pegged, at least in part, to gold. And we may be getting an announcement regarding this BRICS currency as early as next month. Now, I don't think it is any exaggeration to say that such an announcement will have major implications for gold, for silver, for the US dollar, and also for the very nature of the international monetary system. And that's what we're going to talk about in today's video. So let's get to it. I want to say a big thank you for tuning into my video today. If you enjoy it and you get some value from it, please do give it a big thumbs up down below. And if you'd like to see more videos about gold, silver, and the global economy, why not subscribe to the channel? Buy your gold and silver from SD Bullion. Right now, new customers can get gold or silver at spot by visiting sdbullion.com/new. Okay, so this is the report from the Russian TASS news agency regarding the creation of a BRICS gold-backed unit of exchange. Now, this report is based on comments from Andrey Mikhailishin, that is the head of the task force on financial services of the BRICS Business Council. And he said the BRICS countries are developing a wide range of instruments for creating an inclusive international financial system, some of which will be announced next month at the BRICS Summit. He confirmed a list of projects that the BRICS are working on, including a common unit of account, a platform for international settlements in BRICS digital currencies, a payment system, a settlement depository, an insurance system, and a BRICS rating alliance. Now, the unit of account is what we really need to delve into here because, according to this report, the unit project assumes that the value of the common unit account is pegged by 40% to the value of gold, with the remaining 60% being pegged to a basket of the BRICS national currencies. The BRICS nations, which include Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, as well as some new members that just joined this year, their GDP actually exceeds the GDP of the G7. You can see here, according to this chart from Statista, that shift actually took place back in 2017 and 2018, but the trend has continued. And with the BRICS organization expanding, admitting new members, and still experiencing significant economic growth, that's not going to change anytime soon. So if the organization that controls the bulk of world GDP decides to suddenly switch to a currency that is pegged to gold, that could stimulate tremendous demand for the precious metal, and that could send the price much higher. Now, speaking of the gold price, as of the time I am recording this video, we already have gold breaking out to record all-time highs. Just yesterday, gold traded as high as $2,586, the first time it has ever traded that high in history. This breakout in the price of gold is largely attributed to the fact that the Federal Reserve next week is widely anticipated to begin cutting interest rates. Currently, here you can see from the CME FedWatch tool that investors are split between a 25 basis point cut and a 50 basis point cut. But one thing they can all agree on is that the Fed is returning to easier monetary policy, and there is going to be a reduction in interest rates, which means more borrowing, more debt, more currency devaluation. But can you imagine what will occur when a BRICS currency is announced, a BRICS gold-backed currency, following an easing by the Federal Reserve? This is a perfect storm for gold and for silver as well. You know, one way that we can see that the gold price, despite having broken out to record all-time highs, likely still has a big way to run is by looking at the gold to silver ratio. So for those of you who aren't familiar, this ratio simply represents the value of gold relative to silver. It's basically how many ounces of silver can you buy for 1 ounce of gold. And right now, the ratio sits at 83.74. Now, it did drop over the past 2 days because silver was rallying faster than gold, but this is still very high historically. And in the past, ever since the end of the gold standard in 1971 by Richard Nixon, what we have witnessed is when you get a big increase in the price of gold and silver, the gold to silver ratio tends to decline. You can see that on this chart. Back in 2011, when gold and silver were peaking, the ratio went as low as 32. So the fact that we're up at 83 right now, it indicates that we are nowhere near the top in this precious metals market. And if we do see the announcement of a BRICS gold-backed currency, I expect that to send gold much higher, but I expect silver to follow right along, and we will probably see a reduction in the gold to silver ratio following such a bullish catalyst for the precious metals. Now, I want to talk a bit about the relationship between the BRICS nations and gold, because as you can see here from tradingeconomics.com, this is a ranking of countries by gold reserves. And the United States is at the very top with 8,133 tons of gold. But Russia and China are down here in the number 5 and number 6 spots, respectively. Now let's talk about Russia specifically, because this, I think, is the best example of how the BRICS nations have disproportionately been allocating their resources towards stacking gold. So sure, the U.S. has bigger gold reserves than Russia. There's no doubt about that, but let's do a little math, and let's just see how much more. So we have 8,133 tons, whereas Russia has 2,336 tons. So we have about 3.5 times the amount of gold that Russia has. Now, of course, if you add China and the other BRICS nations in there, that math starts to change a little bit, not to mention the fact that there are likely unreported holdings, but let's just go with the official numbers for now. Now, looking at GDP by country, you can see that the US, with the world's largest economy, has a GDP north of $25 trillion, whereas Russia is down here in the number 8 position with an economy of $2.2 trillion worth of GDP. So think about this. Relative to the size of the GDP, Russia, with an economy 1/10 the size of the US, they have about a third the amount of gold. So they actually have a lot more gold relative to the size of their economy than the US does. And this is part of why they want to transition the global economy away from dollars towards gold. There's other reasons as well. The fact that they want to avoid sanctions, the fact that they want a currency which is politically agnostic, but you can certainly see here that they have been setting the stage for this by accumulating large quantities of gold. Now, it's no coincidence that this is occurring against the backdrop of elevated geopolitical tensions. It was just this week that Vladimir Putin warns that NATO risks a war with Russia over Ukraine's use of long-range missiles supplied by the West. Now, you might wonder, how is a gold-backed or gold-pegged BRICS currency related to geopolitical tensions and war? How could this be considered an act of fifth-generational economic warfare? Well, this article from the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis gives us a clue why. This is an article titled, "Here's Why the U.S. No Longer Follows a Gold Standard." They are interviewing St. Louis Fed economist David Wheelock, why the U.S. doesn't want to return to a gold standard, and he says, the U.S. mines a lot of gold, but we're not the biggest producer. The bigger suppliers, who he doesn't name here, of gold would have more control over our monetary policy, and there's no reason to have it because we can get the advantages of a gold standard and avoid the disadvantages without being on a gold standard. Now, I disagree with this statement that we can get the advantages without a gold standard, but to his point, this chart from the World Gold Council reveals who those big producers of gold are. And if you look at the number 1 and the number 2 spots, it's China and the Russian Federation. So a part of why the U.S. doesn't want a global gold standard is because it would benefit China and Russia disproportionately. And that is a big reason why the BRICS nations are moving towards a gold-backed currency. Now, they've been talking about this for a while, but I think one of the reasons that they have delayed this until now is because they really need to get it right the first time. And there is ample evidence that they have been preparing for this for a while, and those preparations continue. Just last week, the Jerusalem Post published this story regarding Russia's 601% increase in gold purchases. So Russia announced that from the period of September to October, they would be increasing their daily gold purchases from 1.12 billion rubles per day to 8.2 billion rubles, an increase of 601%. Now, this, I think, does lend credence to the idea that BRICS is preparing for a gold-backed currency. They've all been accumulating large quantities of gold, and as you can see from this report, they are ramping up that process as we speak. Of course, it's not just Russia. This chart from the World Gold Council shows that China was the biggest purchaser of gold back in 2023. Last year, they've been on a gold buying spree, loading up on hard assets in anticipation of what they have planned, a gold-backed currency. In recent months, China has taken a break from the official gold purchases. Who knows, maybe they are buying behind the scenes, but this is the chart for July, and you can see that India is in the number 2 position there, another BRICS nation. India is the I in BRICS, and look at the number 1 position, that is Turkey. Now, what did we recently hear regarding Turkey? Well, last week it was reported that Turkey is now seeking to join the BRICS organization after being rebuffed in their attempts to join the EU. So Turkey loading up on gold, heading for the BRICS camp. I think you can detect a bit of a trend here. And this has been in the works for years now. Rumors, as I mentioned, have been swirling regarding a potential commodity-backed or gold-backed BRICS currency. It was last year that centralbanking.com published this headline: Russia and Iran discuss joint gold-backed stablecoin, the central bank of each country working in tandem to create a digital currency backed by gold to facilitate foreign trade settlements, replacing the dollar, the ruble, and the Iranian rial. And you might recall that in the lead up to last year's BRICS conference, rumors were swirling about 2 topics. One was the potential expansion of BRICS. The other was the creation of an alternative currency. Now, we didn't get the currency, but we did get the BRICS expansion, with Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and the UAE joining the ranks of BRICS, and also Saudi Arabia later accepting the invitation into BRICS. And now that they have gotten the expansion out of the way, I believe that this may be the year that we hear about the BRICS gold-backed currency. Now, back to the gold chart briefly, you can see that gold has recently broken out of a multi-month consolidation pattern on the anticipation of easy money from the Federal Reserve. Now, from a technical standpoint, it looks to me that following this breakout, gold will be headed much higher. But at the same time, you can look at this chart. This is the chart of the US dollar index, the DXY. Now, recently in mid-August, the dollar index broke down through a critical support level. And then if we zoom into the recent action here from a technical standpoint, this is not looking good at all. This looks like a double top forming to me. And that could mean that if the dollar index breaches this support line here, this neckline of this double top formation, it could be look out below for the dollar. Now, think about what is occurring right now. You have got the Federal Reserve with gold at a record all-time high price and the dollar breaking down on the verge of the much anticipated pivot towards easier monetary policy. At the same time, you have got geopolitical tensions around the world soaring and the potential for a gold-backed currency to be announced by the BRICS nations. Now, that could upend the entire global monetary order. I'm not saying it's a guaranteed thing. I mean, we'll have to see how things play out in October. What will the actual announcements be? When I look at these charts, when I look at the overall situation, it appears to paint a very bearish scenario for the US dollar and a very bullish one for gold. But I'd love to know what you think. Leave me a comment down below to let me know what you think about the topics we covered today. Will the BRICS nations announce a gold-backed currency next month? If they do, what's it going to mean for the dollar? What will it mean for gold? What will it mean for silver? Leave me a comment down below to let me know what you think. Thanks for watching, everybody. Stay safe and happy stacking. I'll catch you next time. Smart Silver Stacker, out.